Hello, hello. Welcome to the advent of syntran. This is day 11. Let's get into it. I think these are about to start getting hard, and they might be at the difficulty where I can't complete them during the work week. So, with that disclaimer, let's check out day 10 or day 11. All right, another grid problem. I love the grid problems. I see people talk about advent of code, and at least last year it seemed like there were some people who said there were too many grid problems. I like them. This is my strength. I mean, I haven't read the prompt yet. Maybe it's something super difficult. So I think that's the test input. Let's see if we can echo that. All right, there's the test input, echoed line by our template program. Every day I just copy a template. So I have some syntran source code already, and that came from 2 levels up. I have this template.syntran, which is just a main function and a part 1, which reads line by line. And it already has this input file toggler where I can change a 0 to a 1 to change from the test input to the real input. So that's what I do every day. And I don't have to write these 54 lines of code. This is just already done. So what are we doing? So we have an image, empty spaces are dots, and hashes are galaxies. And the universe is expanding. Without that paragraph, maybe this would be simpler. Oh. So this row has no galaxies, this row has no galaxies, and I can't highlight it here because that's not how selecting text works in internet browsers. I can do this in Vim, but there are also columns that are empty. So we can expand those and make them twice as big. And then this is what the expanded universe looks like. Well, this is just the observable universe, right? Do they say that? Observable? No, this is maybe the whole universe. So are we doing the taxi cab norm, or are we doing the 1 norm, or the infinity norm, or the 2 norm? 36 pairs. Okay, but like, what's the distance? Up, down, left, or right. So it's the Manhattan norm or the taxi cab norm. It's the abs. That's the 1 norm, right? Sometimes I get the 1 norm and the infinity norm mixed up, but I think this is the 1 norm. So we don't have to do Dijkstra or anything, because it's just the distance between 2 points is just a function of the locations of those 2 points. You don't unless they're like obstacles that we have to go around. Yeah, you're allowed to pass through another galaxy. one of the shortest paths between 5 and 9. So from 5 to 9, it doesn't matter whether you zigzag almost diagonally like this, or if you just go from 5 straight down and then over to 9. It's the exact same distance either way. This doesn't seem bad. I don't know about the expansion. Like, can I just explicitly expand everything and then do my math on the actual galaxies or on the actual universe? Or is that going to eat up so much memory that I can't handle it? So let's look at the real input to think about how much we need to optimize this. So I think part 1 we can do. We'll see what happens in part 2, but I think I can get part 1 tonight. Like I said, these are going to start getting more difficult, and there's a good chance I won't be able to solve them. But I can at least do part 1 today. Before I proclaim that, let's look at the input. So it's 140 characters wide and 140 characters high. So what is that? Let me do syntran as a desktop calculator. So it's 140 squared. If we allocate an array to hold all of this, this will be 19,000 elements big, almost 20,000. Now, space is expanding according to this funny rule where any empty column and empty row will be twice as big as it actually is. So worst case scenario, this whole universe could be twice as big. Not everything is empty, so it's not twice as big. It's less than twice as big. It's somewhere between 1 and 2 times as big. But worst case scenario, it's going to be 280 squared, and that is 78,000. So I'm just worried that, like, can I expand this explicitly in memory and like still hold it in my system? Because I only have 16 gigabytes of RAM. I don't just have unlimited memory, but 78,000 is totally manageable. Hey, Justice, welcome back to the stream. Oh, I have a raider. I don't really understand what raiding is, but thank you for the raid, I guess. Thanks. Thank you, non-codes. Yeah, so I think I could do part 1 here. And I'm just going to explicitly expand. We raid you with our views. So basically everybody who is watching your stream is now watching my stream. I think that's how it works. Cool. Okay, so instead of reading my file like this, I want to count the lines and pre-allocate some stuff. Now Non owns my code. It's on GitHub, so feel free to steal it. Is this the name? No, there's an underscore at the end. I put underscores at the end in case I decide to make these functions built into the language later, so this is a safeguard for future compatibility. So we've got that, and then is programming just a fun hobby? Yes, and it's also my job. So it's a hobby and it's my job. Okay, so the size of the test input is 10 by 10. Now we have empty space and we have galaxies. It's just dots and hashes. What kind of programming do I do for a hobby? Right now I'm doing Advent of Code. At other times I'll take up various other side projects. So a while ago I did, a job. Is this Fortran? This is not Fortran, this is Syntran. And then Syntran is my language, which has an interpreter that's written in Fortran. So at some level it is Fortran, but the syntax is entirely different from Fortran. I work at a big West Coast tech company. So we're going to scan character by character through the row. And these aren't actually the sizes of the galaxy. So maybe I want to give these sizes a different name. So this is like the initial size, and then we're going to expand the universe, and it's going to get a different size. What is it? What the secrecy? It's a secret. You can probably find out if you look at my social media or something. Okay. So, if... Do I need to expand this? Yeah, I'm in the world domination department. Wow, this chat is going crazy. I have to scroll to see it all. Sorry if I miss a few comments. Yeah, I'm just going to keep things as integers. I'm not going to have like an internal enum or anything super abstract. But I do want to allocate a matrix of matrix of characters so that I can work with a matrix of characters instead of a vector of strings or one line at a time. Yeah, weapons of math destruction. That's what I do. So let grid equals, it's going to be a matrix of strings. So initially it's just going to be empty strings. And again, this is like a preliminary thing. We're going to expand it later. And then grid ix iy equals string ix, because as we're reading one line at a time, string is just one line. So this only has an x index. I think that should load the data. This is basically the same as what I did yesterday. Yeah, loading a grid of characters. So this should be familiar. Okay, so this is my grid. I now have commas in there as separators and spaces, but other than that, we just have dots and hashes. So hashes are galaxies and dots are empty space, and we have to find the distance between every pair of galaxies. I also want to count the number of galaxies and maybe save their positions in another list. So we're going to do 2 passes through everything to do that. This first set of loops was just to load things from the file. Now we have to count the galaxies. Those are the hashes. If grid ix iy equals hash, then we're going to increment the number of galaxies. Yeah. This is a longer variable name than I usually use. I want to print this as soon as I load it. And maybe I don't actually care about it afterwards. So we have 9 galaxies. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, I seem to have counted those correctly. And then when do I want to expand the universe? I think I want to have a list of empty rows and a list of empty columns. And then, yeah, maybe I don't really need to explicitly expand this table. I can get a list of the empty rows and the empty columns, and then I'll have a list of the galaxy coordinates, but then I'll just change their coordinates without really expanding this whole matrix. So I think that's what I'll do. We have to find the empty rows and the empty columns and probably save those in a list too. But before that, I want to save a list of the galaxy coordinates. And that's going to be like this loop. So the first pass was to count them, and now we have to save them. But this is like the initial set of coordinates. Yeah, I don't know if I need another temporary variable or not. So these are the coordinates in the unexpanded universe. Unexpanded, non-expanded. I don't know which one of those is a word. This is going to be a table. I will just initialize it to zeros while I'm allocating it. And it's going to be 2 by the number of galaxies. And then when we find one, we're just going to set the coordinates. So galaxies so the x coordinate is ix and y is iy. So we have a galaxy at 3, 0. This is 0, 1, 2, 3. So that's 3, 0, 7, 1, 0, 2. Those are all the galaxies. I want to check if the last one is correct. 4, 9, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep, I think those all look correct. Now I think I'm ready to find the empty rows and columns. But maybe just one at a time. First rows and then columns. Yeah, so rows are going to loop through Y. And then we want to check if the row is empty. So Have I expanded the universe yet? Not yet. I'm just about to figure out which rows and which columns are empty. And then I have a list of galaxy coordinates. So this is the list of galaxy coordinates in the non-expanded universe. And then once I know the empty rows and columns, I'm going to modify these coordinates somehow. That could be a little bit tricky, but I hope I can do it without wasting too much memory. Yeah, the canonical universe. I like that, because unexpanded, I don't think unexpanded is a word, so canonical universe. If I read these comments later, I'm not going to remember why I said that. Okay, so now we need to check if this row is empty, and to do that we have to scan across the columns in the x direction. But this is the while loop. That's how you know it's good. So grid ix_iy equals hash, and then increment ix. I don't want to deal with growable arrays or two passes, so I think I'm going to have a Boolean vector to mark each row as empty or not. And then the number of rows is ny. Then at the end of this loop, is row empty iy is empty. ny not. Is that all? Is row empty? Let. Okay, so none of them are empty. That's not right. This is the exact opposite of what I wanted to check. Okay, so 0, 1, 2, 3. Row 3 is empty. Yep. 4, 5, 6, and 7 should be empty. I think we got that right. We have a true at 7 and a true at 3. Okay, now we have to do the same thing for the columns. I'm going to intentionally not copy and paste that code, because if I copy and paste it, I'm probably going to not do it right. So this needs to change to x. Basically, it's going to be this, but every x is swapped with y, and vice versa. Or, yeah. Except here, I don't want to swap this ix and iy, because the first index of the grid matrix is always x, and the second index is always y. If I switch these, I'm transposing my grid, and that's not what I want to do. Okay, so column 2 is empty. This is the wrong day. So column 2, that's empty. Right there. 3, 4, 5 should also be empty. 2, 3, 4, 5. That's empty. And that's, no, there's one more. Yeah, the next to the last one, the penultimate column is also empty. Okay, next is expanding the coordinates. So, I might have to think about this for a minute. We can handle the x coordinates and the y coordinates independently. So we can, looking at x, just thinking about the first row. So when we're expanding the x coordinates, we're going to count the number of empty rows that we've hit so far. So 0, this row, or no, the empty columns that we've hit so far. So on the x coordinate, we care about columns. So not empty, not empty. And we're also going to keep track of the position that we're at. So 0, 1, both not empty. 2 is empty. So then we add an extra one and we count that as 3. And then we get here. So this is really coordinate 4 instead of coordinate 3. X coordinate 4 instead of 3. And then we just repeat that for every column. But then do I also need to iterate over my galaxy list? Yeah, maybe I saved the galaxy coordinates too soon. I don't know. So I might not use this at all. So it's going to be like this. Yeah, I think I saved my galaxies too soon. So I counted the number of galaxies, and that's helpful. But I don't actually want to do any of this stuff yet. I do want to allocate them. Now, these iterators are in the canonical coordinates. So I x or y. That's it. And then I want to keep track of the expanded coordinates too. So within the y loop, we need to do some extra stuff. And we're also going to need to do some extra stuff inside the x loop. So out here, we're going to initialize the actual expanded coordinate to 0. And then at the end of the loop, we're always going to increment it. And then if we have an empty empty row, we also increment it. And I think it doesn't matter whether I do this at the beginning or the end of the loop. So at Y, I care about empty rows. And this array is indexed by the canonical Y coordinate. And if that's empty, we're going to increment the actual coordinate again. And I think it doesn't matter whether I do this at the top of the loop or the end of the loop, because if this row is empty, I'm not going to set any galaxy coordinates anyway. So it shouldn't matter whether I do this at the top or the bottom, but maybe I'm wrong about that. Now we want to do the same idea for X, but X is going to be expanded if the column is empty instead of the row. So X is initialized to 0. And then at the top of the loop, but again, it doesn't really matter whether I do it at the top or the bottom. If the column is empty, then I'm going to increment that again. And at the end of the X loop, I have to increment it every time, unconditionally. Now, the coordinates, instead of these canonical coordinates, now we're going to save the list in terms of those. This thing should get printed way higher up because it was the first thing that I counted. And now I can print these in the expanded space. Is this right? Let's find out. Zero, 1, 2, 3, 4. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I think we got that right. How about we check some of the Y coordinates? 5, 11. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then in terms of Y, it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I think that's right. So I think we expanded the universe. Now we have to get the shortest distance between every pair, but only count each pair once. And then sum the lengths of all the shortest paths. I could end up being wrong, but that doesn't sound too hard. Now that we're done with the expansion, I think like the expansion is the hard part. And maybe there's an easier way that you can do the expansion if you just allocate a whole bunch of memory. But I think this was the optimal way to expand the universe without like allocating a huge table that's potentially twice as big in each dimension. Yeah. So we're going to iterate through pairs of galaxies. And the order is not important. So we're going to hit each pair once. So for I in this can actually we'll start at 0. I think it doesn't. Yeah, I doesn't matter. And then for j in 0 to I. So the first loop is actually going to be a no operation because for j from 0 to 0 is just an empty set. So this is going to do nothing on the first loop through I. And then we're going to find the distance between galaxy I and galaxy j. This is called the one norm distance, or the taxicab norm, or the Manhattan norm. I have no idea how to spell Manhattan. And it's just the sum of the absolute values of the differences. So I don't have an absolute value function in syntran, but it's pretty trivial to implement. Did I already do it? No, I kind of like inlined it when for the least common multiple, which I needed on day 8 or something. That is in terms of the absolute value of the product of two numbers, so I just like inlined the absolute value function, but that's the same way that you implement it. Do I want to put the type in here? Now this is abs of I32. And if it's negative, we negate it. If it's positive, we leave it alone. That should be the absolute value. If we start getting negative distances, then we'll know that the absolute value isn't right, because distances should always be positive. So it's going to be the absolute value of the difference in the x coordinates plus the absolute value of the difference in the y coordinates. Maybe I want these on separate lines. Hey, Callie. That's my cat. You can probably tell. Want to say hi to Twitch? You're probably just hungry and you want dinner. She's off camera, but she's right in front of my monitor, so I can't see anything. You guys hear purring? It's got to be really loud. 0i minus galaxies 0j, and these are the y coordinates, so I think that's the 1 norm. Kelly, you moved my microphone. I guess she's like scent marking on the microphone. She's just rubbing her face all over it. I guess you can't actually see the microphone. Is that the distance? The dev and the cat. Welcome to the stream, Vision for All. I might have some technical difficulties if she like bites my microphone cable. Okay, so do we have the right distances, and do we have any duplicates? It looks like we might have some duplicates. How many pairs of galaxies are there? I think they told us in the puzzle. There are 36 pairs. Okay, maybe that's right. If there are 9... Okay, so they just tell us that there are 36 pairs. We don't have to count that ourselves. I don't know, this looks like about 36 lines. Let's sum it up and see if that's right. So, sum plus equals dist. And what are we expecting? 374. Okay, let's try this on the real input. I don't really need to log all of these distances unless something goes wrong. I'm feeling good about this one today. Let's go. All right, part 2. Oh, I'm glad I did it the smart way. What are we building? We are solving Advent of Code. If you're new to Advent of Code, these are a series of Christmas-themed programming puzzles. So today is December 11th. That means puzzle number 11 just unlocked. Every day, one puzzle unlocks, and each day has 2 parts. So when you solve the first part of that day, then you unlock part 2. And yeah, that's what we're doing. I've been doing okay this year. I haven't figured out day 5 part 2 yet. That was the hard one for me. Some of these other ones were hard, and I eventually figured them out a couple days later after the fact. But I'm feeling good about today. Now this is just going to be 1 million times larger, and because I did this the smart way without allocating a huge table, I think we can do this efficiently. I probably need 64-bit integers. Maybe. 1 million? No, I don't think I even need 64-bit integers. Do I have a private leaderboard? I'm on a private leaderboard. It's not my own, so maybe yeah, maybe next year I'll set one up. I don't think there's a point for me setting one up halfway through the AOC. But yeah, that's a good suggestion. Thanks. So it's just 1 million. What do we have, 100 rows? So 100 times 1 million is 100 million. So worst case scenario, we're going to have coordinates around 100 million, or maybe 1 billion. Okay, but then if I sum that up through every pair, I'll probably have integer overflow. So I think I do need integer overflow for some, or 64-bit integers for some things. What was that? Okay. Hey, Connie. Welcome back to the stream. Let's copy and paste part 1. First of all, I don't think I need to print all of these distances. Okay, so that's part 1, a little bit less verbose. I don't really need the coordinates either. What else am I printing? Almost there. Okay, that's part 1 with basically just the answer and nothing else cluttering up my standard output. So now I'm ready to copy and paste that. And this is going to become part 2. So first of all, can we just run part 1 twice? Yep. Now, instead of inserting 1 extra row right here, I want to insert 1 million extra rows. Yeah. Instead of expanding the map, I extracted the coordinates and expanded them. I think you're describing the same thing that I'm doing. Maybe you did it slightly differently than me. So 1,000,000. And then here, no, that's the wrong one. I have to expand this one. And then this one is also 1,000,000. I think I put the correct number of zeros there. Now, I think this should be safe. I think the distances should still be 32-bit integers, and that should be safe. But when I sum them up, when I accumulate all of those into the sum, this might overflow, so I think I have to make this a 64-bit integer. But let's see what happens. Yeah, it's a negative number, so clearly that overflowed. So this is now a 64-bit integer, and I think that should do it. I might set a record here for my fastest AOC yet this year. One of the early days, I think I might have gotten done in under an hour. Well, I don't even know if this is right yet. So, should I add 1,000,000 or should I add 999,999? I think I read this too fast. I'm not even going to reread it. I'm just going to change that to all nines. Yeah, 1,000,000 minus 1. Oh, that would have been an easier way to type correctly if I just tacked a -1 onto the end. Callie, your butt's in my face. Ah, come on. To time out for 13 seconds. I'm feeling good about this too. Usually they hit me with a timeout after I get the wrong answer like 3 times or something, but I'm surprised there's a timeout after just 1 wrong attempt. Maybe I did part 2 too fast after doing part 1. I think it's been 13 seconds. All right, that's it. Yeah, that might be a record. 47 minutes and 47 seconds. What was my fastest stream so far? I'm not signed in here, so I just have to search for myself. Callie, you're making all kinds of noise on Twitch. So 2 hours, 1 hour and change. This one was just like messed up. Did I get both parts for day 6? Okay, so I think I solved day 6 in roughly the same amount of time. And then like the last few minutes we're just pushing this to GitHub. So that doesn't really count. It's within the margin of error. Callie really wants dinner. So she is all over my desk. Yeah, that's basically it. I'll add this, I'll commit this, I'll clean up. Don't really need to print this stuff either. I like the logging to be just the answer for advent of code, plus like my usual header so that I know I ran without crashing. This is day 11. Of course I changed something on my other computer. Callie, your butt is like right on the camera. Oh man, I have a conflict. I'm the only person working on this and I have a merge conflict. Day 10. Okay, now I can finally push. So this should be our code that we just wrote. I don't really care about the input. Yeah, so this is the code that we wrote for part 1. Wow, a single PC. I don't think I've done that yet. I will sometimes clone the same code in multiple different folders. So like if I want to work on 2 different things without checking out branches, I can just change folders instead of changing branches. And that sometimes makes things easier when you're working on like a really huge project where compile times are an issue. So I can see how that would happen, but I don't think I've done that yet. Usually it's like I changed something in the README on my laptop last night, and I forgot to pull that here. I can get rid of this. This was totally commented. Yeah, and then I want to clean up the logging too, and then I'm going to end the stream soon. This is all commented. I can get rid of it. Because I saved the galaxies too early, and then I realized I can just expand them and save their coordinates at the same time. And it's easier that way. If I saved their original coordinates, then when I'm expanding here, I would have had to like I would have needed another for loop in here to loop through every galaxy and check if it's in the current row and the current column. But it's a lot easier if I just, load them from the original table right here. Golly. And then I had the same junk here in part 2. Oh, that's not what I wanted to run. Okay, so now the only thing it prints is the answer. My wallpapers are just a single branch. You have like desktop wallpapers on GitHub? I'm not really working on any side projects right now, just Callie is biting me now. Callie, do I have to kick you out? Free cloud storage. Yeah, good point. Oh yeah, because as long as you have public repositories, there's like no limit on GitHub. Yeah, I'm not really working on any side projects. Sorry if I already answered that. I got distracted by my cat. Just my day job and advent of code is like overwhelming me, so definitely no time right now. 4K and 8K, sounds cool. Okay, so now this is only printing the answer. I think that's about as clean as I want it to be. All right, it's not very often that you get an easy problem on like day 11 or later, so I think I'm just going to take advantage of that. Make sure that this last commit pushed. Callie does not want to let me use the mouse. Oh yeah, it's easier to share that way. I guess there are advantages to that. All right, well, yeah, I think that's the end of the stream for today. So I will catch you next time.